Okay, we're in the Gemara on Daf Samaches Amud Aleph. First word on the line is Oimrim, about 10-15 lines from the bottom of the Amud. Hahu Yenuke de Shtape Chamime. There was a baby that a bris had to be made for the baby, and they need hot water to bathe the baby before the bris or after the bris. And the hot water that was prepared before Shabbos was spilled. Amalu Rave. So Rave says, what can we do? Nishayle le'ime. Let's ask the mother itzricha whether she needs hot water. And for her, she's in the sakana, sakana, it's allowed to prepare hot water for her. And then nachri agavime. A guy is allowed to heat up the water for the mother, and together with heating up that water for the mother, you heat up enough for the baby as well. Amalei Rav Mesharshi l'Rave. So Rav Mesharshi says to Rave, Ime ka'achlet tamri. I noticed the mother was eating dates, cold dates, so she doesn't need water to heat her up. So it's not allowed to use a guy to warm up the water for her. Amalei. So Rave said, not necessarily. Eime tunve ba'al muhudanakatla. She's confused. She doesn't know what she needs. She's eating dates. She's hungry, but really she probably needs hot water for her health, and therefore you're allowed to have a guy heat it up for her, and also heat up enough for the child. Again, this similar story happened. This is the third time we have this incident of Hu Yanuke, the Shtape Chamimi, a case of a baby with the hot water needed for the bris spilled out. So Rave has another solution in this case of how to get hot water to the baby. Amalu Rave. So Rave tells them, so here before we learn the Gemara inside, what happened was Rave had hot water in his chutzner. You want to be able to bring the hot water from one chutzner to another chutzner. How are you going to be allowed to bring it from one chutzner to another chutzner? There was no Erev Chatzeris between them. So we're going to do Bittul Rishus. The people of the Rave. Rave is going to be Mevatel, his Rishus to the Rishus of the people of the other chutzner. So they'll be able to carry from one chutzner to another chutzner. So as we'll see here in the Gemara, there were Bei Nashi and Bei Gavri. Let's take a look in the picture, where you can see it, how it's described, what was the case over here. So we're going to go to picture, just a moment. Picture Tov Tes Vov. So you have on the left of the picture, the house where the baby is in. Then you have another chutzner, which has hot water in it. So we want to be able to carry the hot water from one chutzner to another chutzner. And then there's a house that's inside this chutzner where the hot water is in. And they took off the roof of the house so you can see what we're talking about. There's the front room of the house, which is called Bei Gavri. That's where the men are. It's in a place that's more exposed and open to the chutzner. Then there's the back rooms of the house, which are Bei Nashi. Those are the areas where the women, who are more tzniusdik, they primarily are in the back of the house. So Rava wants to be mevatel his rights in the chutzner to the people of the other chutzner, where the baby is, in order to be able to carry from this rishus to the other rishus, to take out the hot water. So therefore Rava says as follows. Let's see inside. Amalu Rava. So Rava says, Panuli moni mi begavri li beinashi. Take my belongings, my clothing, my kalim, from the front room of the house that's open to the chutzner to the back room, to the place where the women usually are. And then ve'ezel ve'esav hasam, I'll go and I'll live in the back of the house. Ve'ivatuluhu ha'chutzner, and I'll be mevatel my chutzner to the people of the other chutzner, so they should be able to carry out the hot water. So why was he doing this? Because once you mevatel your rishos, so then you can't use that chutzner. You will mevatel it to the people of the other chutzner. You're not allowed to use it. If you're going to use it, then the bittul of the rishos is suspended. So therefore he wanted to make sure that no one will take out anything from the house into the chutzner. So he said, let's remove all the kalim and put it in the back room. So it won't be there available to take out into the front room. It will be mevatel my chutzner to the people of the other chutzner, and then they can come and take the hot water for the baby. That was his eitzah. So back to Gemara. So Ravina said to Rav, but Shmuel said, the concept of bittul rishus only works to the people in one chutzner. You can be mevatel your rights in this chutzner to the other people in this chutzner, but you can't be mevatel your chutzner to the people of another chutzner. Right? We learned about this before. Amalei, so Rava answered, Anok, Rab Yechanan, Svirele, I follow the opinion of Rab Yechanan, the Omar, Yesh bittul rishus mechatzer lechatzer. The concept of being mevatel reshus does work even for the people of one chotzer being mevatel their reshus to the people of another chotzer. So the Gemara, so now Ravina asked him, if you don't hold of what Shmuel said, that you can't be mevatel reshus from one chotzer to another chotzer, if so, why were you so concerned that you can't take out your kelim into this chotzer, and you said we're going to move to the back room? Why don't you leave everything where it is? And so let's say this was in the morning, they wanted to make a bris, and they need to take out that water. So be mevatel the rights of your chotzer to the people of the other chotzer. But then, after the bris is over and they already got their hot water, and now the people of the other chotzer will be mevatel their rights in the reshus back to you, that you should be able to carry out into the chotzer. So, point that he's saying is that bittul reshus, when you have one person that's mevatel his reshus to somebody else, so the other person could later on in the day in Shabbos be mevatel back to the other person, different times in Shabbos. Reuven's mevatel to Shimon, then later Shimon is mevatel to Reuven. So over here, why do you have to be worried that you have for the entire Shabbos to stay in the back room? Let the other people of the other chotzer be mevatel back their reshus to you, and you'll be able to carry out into the chotzer. And he brings the source for this. The Ha'amar Rav says, mevatlin v'chayzrin mevatlin. When you mevatel your reshus on Shabbos, you can be mevatel. One person is mevatel to one first, and then another person can be mevatel back to him for another part of Shabbos. So if you don't hold like Shmuel, you probably hold like Rav that says that you can do this. And for the Gemara, Rav said, "Ana b'haka Shmuel." Svirili, I follow regarding this, whether you could be mevatel and then another you can be mevatel back to you. In this detail, I hold like Shmuel. The Amar Shmuel says, "Ein mevatlim v'chayzerim mevatlim." You can't be mevatel and be chayzerim mevatel another time. Another person should be chayzerim mevatel to you. Okay, so in one detail, he holds like Rabbi Yochanan, not like Shmuel. He holds like Rabbi Yochanan that you could do bittul reshus from one chotzer to another chotzer, but when it comes to being mevatel once and then the other person is mevatel back to you again, in that he holds like Shmuel, that you can't. Fragt the Gemara, v'lav chat taimuhu. Aren't these two subjects connected to each other? Isn't it all one thing? My time what's the reason why Shmuel holds? Once one person was mevatel to another, so that other person can't be mevatel back to you again. What's the reason why not? Why can't, if you're allowed to do bittul reshus in the middle of Shabbos? So Reuven was mevatel his rights in the reshus to Shimon, and then later on in Shabbos, Shimon is mevatel his rights to Reuven. Why can't you do it in the middle of Shabbos? Lav isn't the reason. Mishum dekive and the batle l'reshusei. Once you're mevatel your rights in this reshus and this chotzer, it's as if you removed yourself entirely from here. You don't live here anymore. And if so, you're like a person from a different chotzer. And therefore, there's no bittul reshus from one chotzer to another chotzer, which is the basis. That's the other shitta of Shmuel. So that's the basis of this idea that you can't be mevatel a second time in Shabbos back to the person, because now he's like a person from a different chotzer. So if so, mar nami loy niftal, if you hold like Shmuel that you can't be mevatel a second time, why? Because now that person becomes like from another chotzer. So how are you mevatel your reshus to people of another chotzer? You must also hold like Shmuel that you can't be mevatel from one chotzer to another chotzer. These two things are tied together. And for the Gemara, no, it's not. They're not tied together. Hasam hainu taima. The reason why you can't be mevatel twice on Shabbos, ki heichi d'lolehevi milsa d'Rabbanan kechucha v'atlula. So the takana of the Rabbanon of bittul reshus shouldn't come out looking like a joke, like a something that like people will laugh from it. That on one part of Shabbos these people are allowed to carry out, and the other people are not. And the other part of Shabbos the other people are allowed to carry out. It looks like it's something strange over here. So therefore Shmuel held that you're not allowed to do bittul reshus twice, one to the other. But nothing to do with the fact that if you mevatel your reshus you become like a person from a different chotzer. It's not connected to that at all. Let's go back to this machlokes itself here. Rav amar mevatlin v'chayzerin mevatlin. You can do bittul reshus once and then you can do it a second time. Shmuel amar ein mevatlin v'chayzerin mevatlin. You cannot do bittul reshus once and then the other person is mevatl back to you. So now the Gemara starts over again. Let's see what's the basis of the argument between Rav and Shmuel. Lames, shall we say, Rav and Shmuel, beplukte the Rabbanan, but Rabbi Eliezer kamiflagi, that Rav and Shmuel argue in the same machlokes of Rabbi Eliezer and the Rabbanan. Rabbanan and Rabbi Eliezer. This is something that was brought up earlier on in Eiruvin, and it's here on the next blot, in the end of the Daf Samach Test, it's brought up again. And the machlokes of Rabbanan and Rabbi Eliezer is when a person is mevatel, his rights to be used in the chotzer, in order that the other person should be able to carry there. Does that mean that he was also mevatel his ownership in his house? And the other person that is allowed now to carry in his house is also allowed to carry from your house into the chotzer. So the Rabbanan say that you will mevatel your rights in the chotzer, but you will not mevatel your rights in the house. So the other person is allowed to carry in the chotzer, but he's not allowed to carry out from your house into the chotzer. Rabbi Eliezer says no. Rabbi Eliezer says once you mevatel your rights in the chotzer, so we assume that what that means is you also mevatel your ownership, your rights in the house. And therefore the other person that's allowed to carry can carry in the chotzer, he can carry from your house into the chotzer. So that's the machlokes of Rabbi Eliezer and the Rabbanan. So what the Gemara is suggesting is that maybe this is the basis of the machlokes of Rav and Shmuel. Rav holds like the Rabbanan, that once you mevatel your reshus, you're removing yourself from the chotzer, you're removing your ownership from the house, and it's as if you don't live there anymore. You become like a person from a different chotzer. And therefore, the other person can't now come and be mevatel back to you, the reshus, because you're not here anymore. Like you will masalik yourself to a different place. You're not allowed to be mevatel mechotzer lechotzer. That's Shmuel. He goes like Rabbanan. And that's Rav actually. Sorry, again, Rav goes like the Rabbanan. And therefore, again, let me make sure I'm saying this right. Rav, again, let's start this over again, sorry about that. So Rav, which says, Mevatlin, v'chayzrin mevatlin, will follow the opinion of the Rabbanan. The Rabbanan said the bittul in the chotzer took effect, but the bittul in the house, my house I still own. No one's allowed to carry out from my house. That's still my place. So therefore, he's still living here. So since he's still a part of this chotzer, he's living in his house here, so the other person could then come back and be mevatel back to me. I'm still here, part of this chotzer. Shmuel, on the other hand, holds like Rabbi Eliezer, that says that once you mevatel your reshus in the chotzer, you mevatel your reshus in the house as well. It's as if you don't live here anymore. So therefore, the other person can't now come and be mevatel the reshus back to you. You're like you're gone. It's like you're not here anymore. You're like in a different chotzer. That's the suggestion here. So the Gemara, Lame Rav Shmuel plucked the Rabbanan Rabbi Eliezer kemiflagi the Rav damek Rabbanan Shmuel damek Rabbi Eliezer, as I just explained. Answers the Gemara, Omaloch Rav. So Rav answers no. Anod Amri Afilul Rabbi Eliezer. I could follow even according to the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer that says that you will mevatel your reshus in the chotzer, you will mevatel your reshus in the house completely. But nevertheless, at kan lekom Rabbi Eliezer hasam hamavatel reshus chatzera reshus beisei bittul, that if you mevatel your rights in the chotzer, that automatically means that you will mevatel your rights, your ownership at the house as well, and therefore the other person can come and carry out from your house. Because there's a svarat, mishum bebayis b'lei chotzer le'dairi inchi. People can't live in a house that doesn't have a chotzer that they can use in front of the house. So if you gave up your rights of ownership in the house, even if you didn't clearly say that you're giving up your rights in the house as well, that's not anymore the place where you're living. That's not your ownership in the house anymore, because you can't live without a chotzer. So therefore we say that it's as if you mevatel both the reshus of the chotzer and the reshus of the house. The other person can come and carry out from there. Aval inyan istaluki, but to go so far to say that this person that was mevatel the reshus of his chotzer and the reshus of his house, it's as if he's completely removed from here, as if he's a person from a different chotzer altogether. Miyama, Rabbi Eliezer never said that, and therefore Rav still maintains that the other person could now come back and be mevatel the reshus to me. I'm still here in this chotzer. Shmuel says, I could follow even the opinion of the Rabbanan that says that the reshus of his house is not bottle. Rabbanan's svara is my the bottle or the loy bottle. What the person explicitly said, that he's giving up his rights in the chotzer, that he gave up. What he did not say he's giving up his rights in the house. He didn't say that. So therefore he's still living here. That was the svara of the Rabbanan. The bottle. However, regarding the chotzer, where he explicitly said that he's giving up his rights in the chotzer, Mia istalek legamri. Legabe the chotzer, it's as if he's not part of this chotzer anymore. It's as if he's a person from a different chotzer. True, he's still living in the house, but legabe the chotzer, it's as if he's completely removed from here. And therefore the other person can't now come and be mevatel his reshus back to me, because now I'm as if I'm totally gone from here. So, it has nothing to do with the machlokes of Rabbanan and Rabbi Eliezer. Tosfos points out that this whole discussion here in the Gemara is based on the premise that the machlokes of Rav and Shmuel is based on the fact that there's a question whether you can be mevatel, or based on the point that you can't be mevatel from one chutzner to another. But we already said before, the Gemara said that there could be a whole different reason, that we don't want the takon of the Rabbanan of Bittul Rishus to look like a chuchat lula. If that's the point, so then it would be simple to explain why Rav and Shmuel's machlokes has nothing to do with Rabbanan and Rabbi Eliezer. The Gemara could have said that, but the Gemara is explaining this even if you're going to say that these two things are tied together, but still, it's not necessarily tolui in the machlokes of Rabbanan and Rabbi Eliezer. It's not, Rav and Shmuel are not necessarily going according to their opinions. So the Gemara weiter, Rav Acha bar Chana Rav Sheishes, Kitanoi. It's a machlokes Tanoim. The machlokes of Rav and Shmuel seems to be a machlokes Tanoim. Why? We learned in the Mishnah, that's a Mishnah here later on the Samach Tesamid based. Misha Nasan Rishusai, a person that gave away his Rishus, he was Mavatal his Rishus to the other people in the Chatzah. Then Vahoitzi. But then on Shabbos, he brought out his items into the Chatzah. Once you Mavatal your Rishus, so then you can't use it anymore. You gave it to the other. But then he was Maitzi, he's using the Rishus. Ben B'Shaygig, whether he did it B'Shaygig, Ben B'Mezid, whether intentionally. Oyster. So now he asks and everybody else. He just annulled his Bittul Rishus by using it. Divrei Rab Meir. Rab Yudah says, B'Mezid Oyster. If he intentionally brought out his things, then he asks and everybody else. But B'Shaygig, any Oyster. B'Shaygig, he does not answer. So what's the reason over here regarding their argument on B'Shaygig? The fact that he brought something out, B'Shaygig. Should that be mevatel his bittul that he did? Should that annul the bittul that he did or not? So my love, wouldn't you say the machlokes of Rab Meir and Rab Yehuda is based on the same machlokes of Rav and Shmuel? The Mar Savar mevatlin v'chayzeru mevatlin. So see over here. So Rab Meir holds mevatlin v'chayzeru mevatlin. What's the connection? So Rashi explains, what's the concept of mevatlin v'chayzeru mevatlin? Even after I do a bittul, I'm not fully removed from this place, and therefore the other person can come and be mevatl back to me. The same thing over here regarding shaygig. Once I carry out something b'shaygig, since I'm not fully removed from this place when I did a bittul rishos, so even if I just b'shaygig brought something back out, so the whole bittul rishos falls apart. I brought something out, even if I didn't intentionally want to be mevatl my bittul rishos, but just by b'shaygig bringing something out, that's enough to say that I'm here again, that I'm part of this rishos, and it gets rid of his bittul rishos. Mar Sava, but on the other hand, Rabbi Yehuda holds, once you are mevatl your rishos, it's as if you're completely removed from here, and therefore the other person can be mevatl back to you. And for the same reason, if you carried something out b'shaygig, it's not going to change the status, because really it's as if you're totally removed. Only if you befeidish had charata b'mezid, and you went and you brought your things back out to return to the rishos intentionally by bringing your things out, then we say it annuls your previous bittul rishos. But if it happened b'shaygig, we consider you to be as if you're not here b'chlal. So these two, the machlekes of Rav and Shmuel, is the basis, is also the machlekes of Rab Meir and Rab Yehuda. The Gemara, he says no, it's not necessarily connected. Like the kula al me'im mevatlin v'chayzerin mevatlin. Everybody would hold that ein mevatlin v'chayzerin mevatlin. Once you made bittul rishos, it's as if you're totally gone, and therefore really there'd be no reason if you b'shaygig brought something out that it should annul your bittul rishos, because really it's like you're totally gone. But v'hacha b'konsu shaygig or to mezid kamiflagi. The argument is whether they gave a knas for the shaygig because of mezid. When you brought out your kalim b'mezid, so you certainly are revoking your previous bittul rishos. You're certainly reinstating your ownership in this rishos. And the question is, they didn't want you to confuse shaygig and mezid, so therefore did they give a knas for shaygig to treat shaygig the same as mezid or not? Mar Savar, konsu shaygig got to mezid. Rav Meir says they made a gzeira for shaygig because of the case of mezid. They did not make this gzeira for shaygig because of the case of mezid. That's the machlekes. Rav Ashi, however, says Rav Ushmuel beplukte the Rabbi Eliezer v'Rabbana kamiflagi. He doesn't accept this answer. He says no. In fact, the machlekes of Rav and Shmuel is the machlekes of Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbana. Going back to the previous thing that the Gemara brought up, not Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda, but before we wanted to tie it into the machlekes of Rabbana and Rabbi Eliezer regarding whether the house is included in bittul rishus or not. So Rav Ashi that it says Rav and Shmuel's machlekes is tied to the machlekes of Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbana. Now the Gemara finally comes back to the Mishnah in the beginning of this Perek. So in the Mishnah, let's turn back to the Samach Aleph Amud Beis. In the Mishnah, the first part of the Mishnah, it spoke about a case where a guy is living in a chutzner with Yidden. So the guy disturbs the Erev Chatzeres, doesn't allow for an Erev Chatzeres. Right after that, the Gemara brings a story about a tzedeki, an argument whether a tzedeki disturbs the Erev Chatzeres as well. And could a tzedeki be mevatel as rishos, or do we treat a tzedeki the same as a guy that you have to rent the rishos from him? And the Gemara brings a story with a tzedeki, Amar Rabbi Gamliel, the story with a tzedeki, that the father says that the tzedeki could be mevatel as rishos. And then Rabbi Yehuda in the Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda says he can't be mevatel rishos. So the Gemara now is, the first thing the Gemara is going to address is, what happened? We started off in the Mishnah talking about a guy, and all of a sudden the Gemara brings a story about a tzedeki. Who was talking about a tzedeki? Sagt the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Gamliel, Meister b'tzedeki echad shahaya dar imanu. A tzedeki living amongst Yidden, and the story was that the tzedeki was mevatel as rishus to the Yidden. And the bittul rishus helps. Tzedeki, mandachar shmei. Where did it mention a word about a tzedeki in the Mishnah till here? It sounds like that Rabbi Gamliel is responding about the discussion that we had about tzedeki, but no one ever said anything about tzedeki. And it says the Gemara Chesuri Machsere, the Mishnah is missing, and it has to say as follows: V'hachi ketani. This is the way I have to read the Mishnah. Tzedeki hareu kanochri. The Gemara brought the story about a nochri, that there's no Erev Chatzeres by a nochri, there's no bittul rishos. A guy can't be mevatel rishos. You have to rent the rishos from him. That's the only thing. So the first thing the Mishnah says is then a tzedeki that doesn't believe in Chazal and is a pakaitis, a kaifer, as we'll see over the Hemshech of the Gemara. So a tzedeki is treated like a guy. Rav Gamliel argues, tzedeki ain't a kanachri. A tzedeki is not like a guy. The bittul rishos works by a tzedeki. Then, Rav Gamliel, Ma'aseh b'tzedeki yechad shayadar imanu b'mavi b'Yerushalayim. There was a tzedeki that was living amongst us in our mavi in Yerushalayim. V'amalanu abba. So after the tzedeki was mevatel as rishus to them, so our father told us, Maravay tzius hakelim l'mavoi. Go quickly, take out your kelim into the mavoi, so that you should be the one to take possession of the use of this mavoi. Otherwise, the tzedeki may take out his kelim into the mavoi, and then even though he was mavatel before, but he's going to revoke his bittul by coming back and using the mavi again. So that's how you have to read the Mishnah. So the Gemara Vatanya, we see this also in a Braisa, that there was an argument about a tzedeki, whether a tzedeki is treated like a guy or not. Hadarim nachri tzedeki ubaysaisi. The Tanna Kama says if you're living in your rishus, there's also a guy, a tzedeki, baysaisi. Hare elu oisrin olav. Just like a guy, a tzedeki and baysaisi is the same thing. They ask it on the person. They can't participate with their chatzeres. There's no bittul rishos. Rabbi Gamliel disagrees, whether you guide this parentheses or not. Rabbi Gamliel leim tzedeki baysaisi ein an oisrin. Then Ma'aseh b'tzedeki yechad shaydarim Rabbi Gamliel b'mavi b'Yerushalayim. V'amalem Rabbi Gamliel l'banav. Rabbi Gamliel said to his children, Banai maru v'aytziim ashatem v'aytziim. Quickly take out what you want to bring out into the chatzah. V'echnisum ashatem achnisin ad shelo yetzi hatoyev hazeh v'yasar aleichem. Otherwise, this tzedeki, this despicable individual, will come and take out his things before you. Sharei bittul rishus elechem. He was mevatel his rishus to you, so make sure that you make use of the chatzar before him. Divrei Rab Meir. This is the way Rab Meir said the version of the story. Rabbi Yehuda says no. B'lashon acheres. Rabbi Gamliel said differently. Maru v'asutzer cheichem b'mavi atchalei techshach v'yasar aleichem. Make sure that you do all you need in the mavoi, because when it becomes dark, so then the tzedeki is going to answer on all of you. In other words, Rabbi Yehuda held that we treat a tzedeki like a guy, and he can't be mevatel as rishus to you. The only eitzah is to rent the rishus from him. Okay, so we see that this was a machlokes about a tzedeki. Now the Gemara goes back to one detail that it said over here. Oh mama, what did it say over in the Mishnah or in the Braisa? Haitziu mashatem mitziim, v'chnisim mashatem machnisin, ad shelo yetzi hatoyev hazeh. Make sure that you take possession, take out your stuff into the chatzir before the tzedeki comes to take out his things into the chatzir. V'yasar aleichem, and then if he takes out his stuff in the chatzir, he's going to undo, he's going to revoke his bittul rishus. Remember, shall we say that this means the chimafki inu, that if they are going to take out their stuff into the chatzir first, v'hada mapiki, and only afterwards will the tzedeki come and take out his things into the chatzir. Lo yasar. He's not going to ask it on them. He's not undoing his bittul rishos by now bringing his stuff into the chatzah. Is that true? But we learned in the Mishnah, and this is over here, weiter on the next Amud, Misha Nosan Rishusai, person that gave his Rishus, he was Mavatl his Rishus to someone else in the Chatzah, but then V'hoitzi bein b'shegig bein b'meized, as we had before. And now he went and brought out his things, whether he brought it out b'shegig, whether he brought it out b'meized, Oisa. He asks on everybody else, Divrei Rab Meir. So what do we see over here in this Mishnah? If you were Mavatl your Rishus to the other people, but then you went and brought out your stuff in the Chatzah, you are going ahead and using this Chatzah, so you ask it on everybody else. So why should it be a difference if they're going to bring out their things before the tzedaki? The moment the tzedaki brings out his things into the chatzah, he asks on everybody else. Rav Yosef, so Rav Yosef says, you're right, it's a very good question. Eimeh, Einoiser. You're going to have to change the girsa in the Mishnah. That Rav Meir holds Einoiser. That the guy, the tzedaki, or over here in this Mishnah actually speaking about anybody, that he brings out his stuff into the chatzah, he doesn't ask it on everybody else. Abaye says, there's no contradiction here between the two Mishnayos. Why? Or between the Braisa that we had before in this Mishnah. Kan Sheikh Ziku B'nei Mavoi. In the Braisa before, what Rabbi Gamliel is telling them is, you take possession of the Mavi first by bringing out your things. And then, even if the Tzedaki is going to bring out his stuff afterwards, it's too late. He can't undo his Bittul Rishus because they already took possession of it. And kan shelo yichzik b'nei mavi. And over here we're talking about a case in this Mishnah where it says that if the person that did bittul rishus now brings out his stuff, is because no one else yet took possession of the chatzah. No one else brought out his stuff into the chatzah yet. So then it does undo the bittul that he did. Now the Gemara brings a source for this in a Braisa. We see this distinction in a Braisa regarding this lashon of Misha Nasan Rishusai. We see this in this Braisa. Why? What does it say here? What happens before a person was Mavatl Rishus? He didn't do Bitl Rishus yet. Okay, we're talking about a case. Okay, sorry about that. So we're talking about a case where a person has to make an Erev Chatzeris. They did not make an Erev Chatzeris. They did not do Bitl Rishus. So this individual came and carried on Shabbos, whether b'shegig, whether b'mezit. So he was over on a Issa d'Rabbanan. He was machal Shabbos, carried in a place without an Erev Chatzeris. Yachal avatel. That he could still do bitl rishos. Divrei Rab Meir. In other words, Rab Meir holds even a person that was machal Shabbos, he was machal Shabbos b'mezid, he still is allowed to do bitl rishos. So this goes back to the whole discussion of tzedaki. A tzedaki is a person that doesn't believe in divrei Chazal. Could he be included in bitl rishos or not? So before we had Rab Meir holds he could. So similar to Rab Meir saying over here, even a person that was machal Shabbos, Issa d'Rabbanan, whether b'shegig, whether b'mezid, he could still participate in bitl rishos. Rabbi Yudah says b'shegig yachal avatel. If he only was machal Shabbos b'shegig, then he could do bitl rishos. B'mezid any yachal avatel. But once he was machal Shabbos b'mezid, so then he can't do bitl rishos anymore. Then that's talking about before bitl rishos. Whether this is a person that was machal Shabbos, whether he's b'chlal allowed to do bitl rishos. Then the Gemara says, Mi shenosan rishusai. What if he already did bitl rishos? Now, after he did bitl rishos, v'hoitzi ben b'shegig ben b'mezid, and then he brought out his belongings into the rishos, as we said before, whether b'shegig, whether b'mezid, oiser. So now he undid his bitl rishos. He brought out his stuff. So he asks us and everybody. Only if he brought it out b'mezid, not if he brought it out b'shegig. We had this before, right? Now, here the Braisa adds a distinction that we said before. When do we say that he asks us if he brought out his stuff? If the people of the Mavi did not first bring out their possessions into the Chatzah, the Mavi. If the people of the Mavi, the other people that he was Mavatal as a shus to them, they already brought out their stuff, so then I say, whether he brought out his stuff, this person that was Mavatal tried to undo his bittul rishus, he brought out his stuff into the chatzah, it's too late. They already brought out their stuff into the chatzah. Now the Gemara goes back to another detail that we said before in the Braisa. Rabbi Yudah said, B'lashon acheres, that the lashon that Rabbi Gamliel told the people in the Mavi with the tzedaki living there was a different lashon. Ma'aruv asutzer cheichen b'mavoi ad shalei techshach. Be sure to take care of all your things before it becomes dark. And then the tzedaki is going to ask you to carry there. Why? Because we treat him like a guy. Alma Nochri. We treat this tzadiki like a guy, and he won't be able to be mevatlas reshus to you. That's the lashon that it said in the Braisa. Ad shaloi techshach. Make sure you do your stuff before it becomes dark. Fragt the Gemara, but v'ho anan ad shaloi yoitzitnan. If you go back to the Mishnah on the Samach Aleph on the base, so over there it says that Rabbi Yehuda said that what Rabbi Gamliel said to them is, make sure you do your things before the guy is going to take out, before the tztaika that is going to take out his stuff and asr on you. Okay? So it's mashma from the Mishnah that really the bittul rishos of the tztaiki, even according to Rabbi Yehuda, does work. He doesn't say Achalei Techshach, it says Achalei Yaitzi. Make sure that you take out your stuff before he takes out his stuff and he's going to undo his bittul rishos. So the Gemara, we're going to have to change the gears in our Mishnah. What the Mishnah means to say is, or the Bach's guide is Achalei Yaitzi Hayom. That make sure to take care of your needs in the chatzah before the day goes out, before the end of the day. Similar to Achalei Techshach. Take care of your things before it becomes dark. That's the lashon of the Braisa. The lashon of the Mishnah is until the day ends, because we treat the tzedeki like a guy. That's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Another answer we could say, again, the contradiction is that in the Braisa it seems like we treat a tzedeki according to Rabbi Yehuda like a guy, and in our Mishnah it seems like that a tzedeki could do bittul rishus, and we don't treat him like a guy. So another answer we could say is it depends. If it's an individual that's a mumar, he's machal Shabbos, but he's only machal Shabbos privately, so then we still treat him like a yid. Kan, in the Braisa, it's talking about b'mumar lachal Shabbos b'farhesya, a person that's machal Shabbos b'farhesya, so in such a case, he's treated like a guy. There's an interesting discussion in Paiskim, how do you define a person that's machal Shabbos b'farhesya? Some say it has to be dafka in front of 10 people, otherwise it's not called b'farhesya. Others say b'farhesya doesn't necessarily mean kipshute 10 people. It means someone that just does it publicly. He doesn't try to hide the fact that he's machal Shabbos. Kamanas law detanya, according to whose opinion, there's this that we learned in the Braisa follow. It says in the Braisa, mumer v'gilui panim, a person that's a mumer, he rebels, he's not makayim mitzvahs, and the gilui panim, a person that's chutzpahdik, Rashi says, a chotzuf, hareze einu mevatlo rishos. So he's machal Shabbos, he's a mumar, or he's a gilui panim, he can't be mevatlo rishos. We treat him like a guy. So first the Gemara wants to clarify pshat in the Braisa. Gilui panim mumar hava. Just because he's a chotzuf, he's a chutzpahdik, so therefore we treat him like a mumar. What's the problem? Or maybe there's a problem of the chotzuf, but why should we treat him like a mumar? Elo mumar big gilui panim. The pshat in the Braisa here is, you read it together. A person that's machal Shabbos big gilui panim, he does it in a chutzpahdik manner, he does it openly, and he yachal mevatlo rishos. He's an individual that can't be mevatlo rishos. Come on, so whose opinions does this follow? Rabbi Yehuda, like this answer that we just gave, according to Rabbi Yehuda, a machal Shabbos b'farhesya cannot be mevatlo rishos. But if it's bitzina, he could. Talk to Gemara, the story happened of Ahu, an individual, or Ahu Gavra, the Bachas Gaid is the Nafek b'chumra sed madusha. He went out with a chumra sed madusha. There's a few opinions of here what this means. One pshat Rashi says it was a kind of ring that has a signet on it, and it was made in such a way that it's not a tachshit, and it's something that's not allowed to be carried on Shabbos, and he's machal Shabbos. Machal Shabbos minat Torah. Or another pshat Rashi says that this is a bag of besamim that he was carrying with him, and it's not a tachshir, it's not a levush, and therefore you're not allowed to carry it on Shabbos. He was being machal Shabbos seemingly before Hasi and the Shusarab and carried it out on Shabbos. But Kivin the Chazil Rabbi Yehuda Nesiya, when he saw Rabbi Yehuda Nasi kasye, he hid it. He didn't want to be noticed that he was machal Shabbos. But Rabbi Yehuda noticed. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi said, this individual, because he's hiding the fact that he's a machal Shabbos, he's not called a machal Shabbos b'far Hesya. This individual, the takana of bittul rishos, still is able to be used by him. Amar Ravuna said, Yisrael Mumar. Who is considered to be a Yisrael Mumar? So the Gemara will soon explain Gabi what it's negeya to know that he's a Yisrael Mumar. How does that change his status regarding what he could do or not do? So the Gemara says, so who's this Yisrael Mumar? Zeh hamachal Shabbos b'far Hesya. Someone that's machal Shabbos b'far Hesya, he's a Yisrael Mumar. So at this point, the Gemara thinks that we're talking about to give this person a status of Yisrael Mumar for everything, for all kinds of halachas. There's all kinds of dinim that's negay of a person that is a Yisrael Mumar. We'll see soon in the Gemara some of the halachas. So the Gemara asks on this. Amalei Rav Nachman. So Rav Nachman says to Rav Huna, come on. According to who is this being said? Rav Meir. If would this follow the opinion of Rav Meir? So as Rashi brings, there's a machlokes in Masechta B'chayris between Rav Meir and the Rabbanon, how we establish a person to be a mumar. So would we follow the opinion of Rav Meir? What did Rav Meir say? Rav Meir says the Omar chashul l'davar echad, a person that's chashul, that is suspected of being over on one mitzvah of the Torah, chashul l'chal Torah kula. So he's a mumar for all the rest of Torah. If he's being over on one mitzvah, so then he's not careful with the rest of Torah. If so, why are you only saying Machal Shabbos b'far Hesya? Why only Chil Shabbos? Why wouldn't you say Stam, a person that's over on any of one Isurim in the Torah, he's a mumar l'kol Torah kula? Why did you choose Dafka Shabbos? So it can't be you were saying this according to Rav Meir. If what Rabbanan said went according to the Rabbanan, what do Rabbanan hold? If you're being over on one thing, so then you're not considered to be a mumar for the rest of Torah. Sorry about that. Only an individual that's a mumar to being over the Avodah Zarah, that's like the whole Torah. Like Rashi here says, that Avodah Zarah is as chomer, as severe as Kol HaTorah Kula, brings the pasuk in Parshas Shlach, v'chisish guv sasu as Kol HaMitzvah Se'ela, that the Avodah Zarah is shakol keneged Kol HaTorah Kula. So only a person that's over on Avodah Zarah is considered to be a mumar l'chol HaTorah Kula. So why are you saying mumar for Chilul Shabbos is a mumar for Kol HaTorah Kula? Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak said, he never meant to say, when he was talking about, when Rav Huna was giving the status of this mumar, Zeu Yisrael mumar, he wasn't talking about giving him the status of mumar regarding all other things in Torah. Lita in Rishos or Levatl Rishos. He was speaking about the din of Bitl Rishos. Does the option of Bitl Rishos that Chacham or Masakin apply to him or not? And he said if he's a person that was Machal Shabbos but for Hesya, it doesn't, like we said before, but he wasn't talking about his status regarding everything else. Okay, the Tanya, as we learned in the Braise, Yisrael Mumar, a person that's a Yisrael Mumar is Machal Shabbos, but Ameshamev Shabbatoi, that is B'shuk. Publicly in the market, he keeps Shabbos. Only privately he doesn't keep Shabbos. Mevatl Rishus. Bitl Rishus is still an option for him. But if he doesn't keep Shabbos even in the marketplace, he's a Machal Shabbos with a Hesya, he can't be Mevatl Rishos. Amru Yisrael Neitl Rishos v'Neisen Rishos. A Yid could take the Bitl Rishos from someone else, and he could also be Mevatl Rishos to someone else, or others are Geiris here Mevatl, not Neitl but Mevatl Rishos v'Neisen Rishos. Ubenachri Ache Yaskir, and a guy he doesn't have the option of Bitl Rishos, you have to rent the space from him. And a Yid is Machal Shabbos before Hesya has the status like a guy in this regard. Keitzad, how do you do the schirus of a guy? The guy has to tell you my rishos, or Keitzad. Made a mistake. Keitzad Rashi says goes benegay to bitl rishos. What do you have to say for bitl rishos? Bitl rishos, you say rishusi knuyalach. I give away my rishos is owned by you. That's or v'telaslach. You say my rishos is bottled to you. Kana, so then the Bitl Rishos takes effect, but vein tzarich liskais. Bitl Rishos does not have to be with a kinyan. Usually you make a kinyan sudar with chalipin. Doesn't have to be done. It's just you say it, and the chacham or masakin that removes your rights to the Rishos legabe Shabbos that the other person cannot carry there. Okay, this was Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak's pshat in what Rav Huna said. Rav Huna, when he spoke about a Machal Shabbos b'far Hesya, and he said that this person becomes a Yisrael Mumar, he was only saying it legabe the halacha of Bitl Rishos, not legabe Kol HaTorah Kula. Because legabe Kol HaTorah Kula, we have a machlekes between Rav Meir and the Rabbanon. Rashi Omar, Rav Ashi disagrees. Rav Ashi says, Hai Tanahu the Chamira le Shabbos kaved zara. He's following the Tana that he's going to quote right now that holds that Shabbos is just as severe as Avodah Zarah. And that's what Rav Huna was saying. Like the opinion of the Rabbanon, that says that if a person is choshed on Avodah Zarah, he becomes a mumar l'chol HaTorah Kula. Shabbos as severe as Avodah Zarah. Keditanya, as you learned in the Braise, and this is a Braise that speaks about karbonis, mikem. The Torah says, Adam ki yakriv mikem. So mikem means from the ones amongst you. V'loi kolchem. Not all of you could be makar of a carbon. Who does this exclude? Prat l'mumer mikem. A mumer amongst you, he's not fulfilling, he's not doing Torah, he can't bring a carbon. Bachem chilakti, and then prat l'mumer. So that's one thing we learn out. Excludes a mumer. Another thing we learn out from mikem, bachem chilakti. Only amongst Yidden do we make this distinction. That there's a Yid, that there's a mumer, cannot bring a carbon. We don't accept a carbon from him. But v'loi be'umais. By goyim, we don't make this distinction. We're mekabel, a carbon from a goy, from all goyim. As Rashi here brings, the pasuk ish, we're marbe everybody, from any goy you can bring a carbon. Vaita the Braisa says, when it says mina behema, what is this teaching me? It doesn't only mean the animal, which is the carbon, but it actually tells me lahavi b'nei adam hadoimim lebehema. B'nei adam hadoimim lebehema, a person that acts like an animal, even he could also bring a carbon. As Rashi here says, that a person that acts like an animal is Rishayim, she'asu atzmam kibehema, she'ena makeres es beira, he doesn't recognize the Creator, or mekabel men carbon. Even from them you could be mekabel a carbon. Mikan amru, so from this we learn out, mekablim karbonis mipaishi Yisrael, we accept karbonis even from sinners amongst Yidden, kidei sheyachsharu b'tshuva, in order for them to do tshuva. Then the Braisa goes on and says, Chutz min ha-mumer va-menasach yayin va-mechal shabbosas beferesya. You do not accept a carbon from a mumer, a person that's menasach yayin for avodah zarah, or a mechal shabbos beferesya. Okay, so now the Gemara is going to explain this Braisa. There were three parts to the Braisa. The Gemara is going to start with the first two parts. Hago fakashye, the Braisa seems to contradict itself. Amret mikem v'loi kulchem lo hitzias a mumer. So in the beginning, you're excluding that a mumer, a rasha, a pesheya cannot bring a carbon. And then the other Tani, right afterwards, you said mekabel karbonis mipaishi Yisrael. From mina behemi, we learn out that you do accept a carbon from a guy, from a pesheya Yisrael, that is a yid that's sinning. So the Gemara says haloi kashi. That's not a question. Reishe b'mumer l'chol ha'Torah kula, a person that rebels and is not mekayim anything in the Torah. In the case of a Pesheya, that it says you accept a carbon from him, he can do tshuva, is talking about a person that's only a mumma for one isser. From him we will accept a carbon. That's the answer to explain the first two parts of the Braisa. But then what does it say in the last part of the Braisa? Chutz min ha-mumer va-menasach yayin, a mumer, and a person that's pouring wine for avodah zarah, and then it said also mechal Shabbos. From them, you don't accept a carbon. So the Gemara wants to understand now, hi mumer hei chedami. Which level of a mumer are we talking about? Are we talking about a mumer for all of Torah? So hainu reisha. That already said in the reisha. So why does it say it again? If you're going to say we're talking about a mumer just for one iser, so then kashi mitzias. Before we said a pesheya, which we said means a mumer l'davar echad, we do accept a carbon from him. And now we're saying that a mumer we don't accept a carbon from him. Elo lav. So don't you think the pshat over here is hachi ka'oma? The pshat in the Braisa, the way it has to be read is it's not three separate things. This is how you read. Chutz min hamumer lin nasach yayin ulechal shabbos befarhesya. The mumer, that he's a mumer for what? He's a mumer for avodah zarah, or a mumer for being mechal shabbos befarhesya. That's the type of mumer over here. So what do we see from all this? Almas, I see from this avodah zarah v'shabbos ki adod yininu. A person that's a mummer for avodah zarah and a person that's a mummer for chil Shabbos, they're both considered to be a mummer for kol ha-Torah kula. Shmamina, this raya, this Braisa is a raya to this idea. So here, just to conclude with this point, the Rishayim explained the reason why Shabbos and avodah zarah are the same, and it's a mummer for Shabbos is like a mummer l'chol ha-Torah kula, just like avodah zarah, because the whole union of Shabbos is zeichel ha'maisa bereishis, to recognize the Creator of the world. So a person that doesn't keep Shabbos is like a person that's serving avodah zarah, doesn't recognize the existence of the Eibishter. Befrat, on a higher level, the way it's explained in Chassidus, the concept of Shabbos is to recognize the fact that the Eibishter is above creation. Aliyas ha'olam is that happens on Shabbos. And then that's why in Shabbos it's not only commemorating Maaseh Bereishis, but also in Kiddush we say that it's Zechi Yitzias Mitzrayim. Then on Shabbos you get elevated above the Mitzias of the world. And avodah zarah, as the Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya, to a more subtle degree, the very fact that a person considers the Welt to be a Mitzias, that's already the Haschala, the Yisoid, and the Shayrish for avodah zarah. So these two things are tied in together, even on that level as well. Okay, a good Shabbos.